This is a sharing and discussion section. You can see this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube for people who won't be able to attend it for real. But here's the basic plan. Discussion section. Uh-oh, you can see this meeting is being live. I got to turn that off. Here's the plan, basically. Where is my slides here? There we go. We always start with a check-in, an emotional check-in. When we do online work, we realize like we're not in the same room. We're not in the same time zone, right? But we're here because we want to learn and share from each other. So if you would, use that powerful tool of the Zoom annotation and roll up to where it says annotate screen. Use your stamp or your drawing tool and indicate the type of weather that you're feeling. This is a metaphorical thing. It's not your actual weather, you guys. Just saying. It's your feelings, right? It's your feelings. And I circled like partly cloudy with the chance of rain because I am in mourning. I don't want summer to end. I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to start teaching. So while I'm a little bit excited about it, I'm kind of sad too. So if you're just joining us, welcome to the Media Education Lab's discussion series, Media Literacy in Higher Education. We always start with an emotional check-in. I'm inviting you to use your annotation tool to indicate your metaphorical internal weather report. Take a minute and think about what is your feeling. And then we'll go around the room and ask you to explain. Now, somebody needs help with the annotation tool. Is there somebody in the room who can open up your microphone and explain? How do you use the annotation tool in Zoom? Who can explain?
Hello, I could do that, maybe.
Thanks,
from a desktop version, because you don't have this in mobile. It's at the line at the up there, view options. You click on view options, and there you have this maybe third or fourth option from the menu, that is annotate. And from annotate, you may choose from mouse, text, draw, stamp, and all the different erasure too. If you have a mistake, make a mistake and choose not the correct climate of your feelings and emotions. You can erase this or undo. You can undo this too. Yeah.
So what a great teacher you are, Iglika. So welcome, and we're happy you're here. We know it's a little bit later in the day in Bulgaria where you are, but which of these weather items did you circle as your metaphor for today, and why?
Well, there is a coincidence here with the actual weather and my inner emotional weather right now, with sun and rain and some clouds. We are quarantined, unfortunately, and going through a hard situation with COVID right now for the first time from the beginning of the pandemics. Even if 3 of 5 people at home are vaccinated, we are happy to not be diseased, but for children that are under 12, this is unfortunately problematic. And
yeah, so of course the COVID situation is affecting your internal weather report. I see Wes Fryer has joined us. Wes, hi, welcome, and we're glad you were able to join us from Oklahoma. Which of these metaphorical symbols represents your internal weather report? If your mood was the weather, what would it be?
Oh, it's definitely sunshine today. We had one of our children get positive last weekend, but all the rest of our family was negative, and we only had to miss a day of school. And I'm not on the Gulf Coast dealing with our hurricane. It's a sunny day, and I'm teaching 5th and 6th grade media literacy again, and we're off to a good school year and a good start. So very sunny here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Kathy Michael, I see you have joined us from Ithaca College. If your mood at the present moment was the weather, what would it be?
I'd have to say I like that my feelings are similar to what's happening where it's partly cloudy. And I like that second one on the left. I did the pink. And because it's a little mixture of everything, I'm excited to be back. It's exciting to see the students. I just started back at work a couple weeks ago in the office from working from home. So it's a good feeling to be back. But by the same token, a little nervous, got that little going up the roller coaster and ready to come down and start the semester feeling. It's a little anxious.
Thank you so much for sharing. If you'd like, you can put your reasoning for your mood into the chat report while I kind of explain what's going to be happening next. You might have noticed if you, hold on here. If you, hold on, and lots of people have entered the waiting room and I've been ignoring them. So my apologies for that. Hey, Salome, can I make you co-host and you can watch that for me? That would be super, super helpful. Hold on just a second. Let me make you co-host and then you can watch that. Where are you, my friend? There you are. And then you can watch that, watch the entries and exits. If you found us by coming to the Media Education Lab, I want to just call your attention to the fact that the slides that we're using for this series are accessible here on the page. I'll put the direct link here in the chat. We thought it would be good because we think we're going to build some new knowledge this year. We're going to have 6 sessions over 6 months. We're going to learn a lot. So we thought we better try to hold on to it. We're going to keep track of what we learned. So you could go to the chat room right now and open up this slide deck and see what we're planning for the next little bit. And I guess you can kind of even see that right now. We're going to take about 30 minutes to talk with our featured speakers about some sort of back to school-y kind of questions. Then we're going to move into a small group discussion group where you'll get to meet with a group of people. If you don't know them, you'll get to know them, and you'll get to talk about the discussion questions with those members of your small group. And then we'll come back for a little bit and do some discussion and reflections. As you can see, this Google slide deck, I think you guys can see that, right? This Google slide deck has a lot of empty space here. So you are welcome to put your contact information or to put some resource ideas. But I did want to take a minute and help you get to meet the featured speakers for today. Joan Mandel, who teaches at Georgetown's School of Foreign Service. Karen Caldwell, who's a educational technology teacher and a online faculty fellow at the State University of New York, Potsdam. Then there's Jane Cubbage from Bowie State University in the communications department, and Amy Sauerteig from Penn State University, Harrisburg, who I met at the Summer Institute this summer, which was great. Then there's my amazing, one of my oldest former students, Hans Schmidt, who teaches communication at Penn State University.
It sounds scary when you say it that way.
You don't look a day over 30, Hans. Just saying. I think you were a baby when you started in the program, right?
I was on the younger side, but it's the camera, that's all.
It's the camera, that's all. All right, so here's the 4 discussion questions that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to pop those into the chat so we can stop sharing for a little bit. Hans, you can go first as one of my oldest students and colleagues.
Yeah.
Which of those 4 questions do you want to address?
Well, I mean, I could talk about any of them.
Pick one,
yeah.
buddy.
Well, I guess I'll let's see here. How about the I'm going to jump to the 4th one, but I think the first one's really interesting. Do you want me to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Talk about them both.
Yeah. Well, I guess, first of all, then with the first one in terms of the context and the classes that I teach a lot of journalism classes right now. That's sort of the role that I've kind of ended up in with a lot of places in our program right now. So when I address media literacy, it's largely from a news literacy angle at this point. So, we talk about, the quality of sources, intentionality, purpose, goals, those sorts of things. But I think that also I have a particular focus then on some of the professional practice elements and journalistic standards. And so, for instance, spending a lot of time thinking about like bias and objectivity, whether objectivity is really possible or not, and sourcing of information. So approaching it from a lot of the perspective of the content creator being a journalist and sort of meshing the professional standards together with the with some of the media literacy in a broader way. And
Yeah,
one of the
Go ahead.
I was just gonna. You said to do the first and the fourth, so I was just gonna jump onto that if you want me to.
Sure.
Okay. In terms of things that I'm interested in seeing in the year ahead, well, there's kind of two of them. One of which is open. Well, they're both open ended, I suppose. But I'm interested in the extent to which media usage that in teaching during the pandemic will translate to post-pandemic teaching, or maybe transition from post-pandemic teaching. I'm wondering if we're going to learn to adopt what we've picked up over the course of the past few years, because I think that a lot of us have really developed a lot of new skills and competencies, ways of approaching education, using technology, and also addressing these topics of media usage and media creation with our classes, even in disciplines where traditionally they wouldn't do so. My fear is that everybody's going to go back to the way of doing things before and not learn from some of the really valuable lessons that I think that we've been forced to learn in the past, year and a half or so. So that's one thing. And then the other one is, I'm just going to put out there a plug, which is that I have a sabbatical coming up this spring. And so if anybody's looking for a collaborator on something, I'm thinking about changing my project right now. So just throwing that out there. That's something I'm interested in learning about. So
if participants are lucky enough to be in your small group breakout room, that's where the idea might develop. All right, next up is Karen Caldwell. Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about the context where you work and how that affects the way you teach media literacy, and then pick another question of your choice.
Great. So I work at SUNY Potsdam, and I'm in the School of Education and Professional Studies in Business Admin, which is not my field of that I've been trained in. I'm an educator, and my doctorate's in mind, brain, and teaching. So I'm obsessed with how we can now harness media as part of our learning. And so I live in Canada, and I commute across the border. And in that context, we are cash strapped, which means great opportunities for open education resources, including tools. And so I weave into every class of mine the selection and evaluation of tools to demonstrate learning, and also selection and evaluation of content. Primarily, I drive the content at the beginning, and depending on the course learning objectives, they may select their own, and that comes with a collective discussion about how to select and evaluate information that is of a high quality.
Wow. So I really appreciate that inquiry focus that then allows them to drive their own train. That is absolutely fascinating. Jane Cubbage, you're up next. Will you introduce yourself to the participants and then tell us a little bit about how your context shapes your approach to media literacy practice, and then pick a question of your choice to answer.
Sure. Thank you, Renee. And good day to everyone, because we don't know what time of day it is. So just good day, general greeting to everybody. I'm Jane Cubbage, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication at Bowie State University. Bowie State University is an historically Black university located in Maryland, about halfway from the District of Columbia and the state capital in Annapolis, to give you a geographical reference for that. And the students at Bowie State University, with it being an HBCU, are those who are typically classified as or self-identify as Black or African American. In that context, research has shown repeatedly that people who are from these classifications or ethnic and racial groups tend to over-index in their media consumption on a day-to-day basis. So my approach to media literacy in higher education stems from the need to help such audiences understand, one, why they tend to over-index, what they're gaining from it, and to take a more participatory approach to media rather than a more active and I guess active and engaged approach instead of just passive consumption, thinking about how they can sort of drive the agenda for what they consume as opposed to simply being consumers. So we talk about things like prosumerism, and we talk about displacement, and we talk about just the images and the messages that they're seeing and receiving, and who is creating those messages and the impact on their media consumption.
Wow. Wow. Jane, lots of questions in the chat. This idea of over-index, does that mean that Black teenagers and Black people use more media? They watch more movies, they play more video games, they listen to more music?
That's correct.
Over-index is like a technical term for like
spending too much time. Yes. And this has been confirmed. Researchers, but Nielsen has also confirmed this as well. So they base these numbers on who to target for advertising, and that it ends up being a troll for researchers, particularly media literacy researchers and scholars, because we want to know, why are they over-indexing? Why are they spending so much time? This is a media literacy issue because, again, going back to displacement, you can get more money, but you can't get more time. So so that means if you're spending it, you want to spend the time wisely, and you want to be spending it on platforms that you create so that it's more resonant for you. They're spending time on messaging not created by themselves. Think about the image, think about the impact of that process alone. So in order to sort of combat that, at Bowie State University, I created a course titled Media Literacy for Diverse Audiences. I'm also working on a textbook so named, coming up in the next couple of, I guess, year and a half. And that is going to be an electronic digital textbook, because we know our students don't really like to turn the page as much. And so I'm thinking about it from their perspective, because what I've found in my research is that media literacy is sort of a general one-size-fits-all in a lot of cases, particularly when it comes to higher ed. And I want that target audience to understand that we recognize your specific needs and interests when it comes to media consumption.
Oh, how absolutely fascinating. And you can see in the chat a lot of interesting dialogue happening about that. Now I want to call to the stage Joan Mandel. Joan Mandel, you are another one of my, not oldest, but my longstanding friends, and we share in common our love of Detroit. Can you talk a little bit about the context that you're teaching in right now, and then answer one other of the questions of your choice?
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everyone. I know everybody's on the edge of their seat starting the new semester, so we can use each other's feedback on things. I look at media literacy as cultural literacy. So I try to figure out how media fits into my students' lives. I find myself teaching at Georgetown in the School of Foreign Service. It's very text heavy. My students come to me, and the only assignments that they've done in most of their classes or final projects are reading text and writing reports on it. So I open up the whole thing. I bring TikTok videos into the class, and they are amazed, first because of my age, and secondly that I'm validating their own experience. So I've learned really a lot from media literacy practitioners in the K through 12 arena. And I was really curious how I could bring some things to the college level without an elite university, perhaps thinking these are Mickey Mouse ideas. And there's a word tossed around a lot at Georgetown related to education, rigorous. So what does it mean to be rigorous and flexible at the same time? That challenges my brain all the time. I think you can be just as rigorous analyzing a TikTok video as a State Department report. My students really love this. So I'm going to give very practically a couple of assignments that I gave to my ecology class last year that worked really well. I'd like to share these because I think they could be done on any college campus. Well, maybe I'll pick one that was successful and one that wasn't, or one that was successful. Okay, it was your hoodie and who made it. So, you know, students like wearing their campus apparel with the sweatshirt with the name of their campus. But where did the sweatshirt come from? Who made it? What was the supply chain to get it to campus? We're talking about all these things like sustainability, DEI. How does any of that fit into your pride in your campus? And how might you interact with the student store? Have there been activist campaigns on sweatshops? All these kind of things. So everybody had some in my class, had some apparel, or even if they didn't have that, they had a notebook with their campus on it. And we just went from that basic thing that everybody owned and used and didn't think about on a daily basis to a very deep level of research, rigorous, flexible, and media literate. So that's one thing. I'll just leave that there.
Wow, what a cool assignment. And I could definitely see how the diverse array of texts in different modalities would have entered into that research process. Now I want to call to the stage Amy. Amy, I'm adding you to the stage here. I want you to introduce yourself, talk to us about the context that you're working, and then choose one of the questions to respond to.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm in my office, and my office has air conditioning that sounds like a vacuum cleaner. So if there's a background noise, I apologize. It's also dripping on me, but that's another story. Anyway, I teach in the comm department, and I teach mostly PR and marketing courses, but I am teaching the critical media literacy class that started at our campus, or started at our university, I believe, about a year or two ago, and comes more from my educational background than my business background. And so this is a gen ed class. And so it's really a different way of thinking in terms of, because I'm getting students that never really think about this stuff, right? As opposed to my comm students who seem to be, a little bit more immersed in it, although, not as much as perhaps they should be. But, I started last week and back in person, which is interesting. And I see I've got international students, I've got freshmen through seniors. And so it's kind of an interesting process to make sure that I always try to aim high anyway, right? In terms of challenging the students to do some things. But what's really interesting to me is just how fresh and new they are to this topic. So I wanted to answer the question about the assignment, because I had sort of an epiphany last night. Literally, it's true. I'm using your book, as you know, Renee. And so they did their first Flipgrid reflections, which I just thought were so funny and actually very entertaining. But the question was that they were supposed to be, reflecting on how media literacy is important to them and part of their lives. And one of the things that kept coming up across the board with all these students was, I don't even know what it would be like to be without media, because I just use it all the time, and it's 24 hours a day. And so I realized that an assignment that I hadn't put into the class, but have used in other classes when I've taught media theory, was, the day without media, the 24 hours or so without media, or as one of my students said, the day I thought I was going to die. That's true. So I'm going to introduce it again, 24 hours without media, or as much as they can without, like not talking to their parents and stuff. I know they have to do a certain amount of stuff, but I really think it's going to be important for them to withdraw, because they literally have no idea.
Yep.
That's my plan for
You're
next week.
definitely connecting to some of the things that Jane talked about. Karen, I know you want to share an assignment that you're planning for this fall. Can you tell us about it?
Sure, just quickly, I'm calling it a course synthesis. And because we use so many OER resources from multiple sources, students have commented in the past that it's tough to collate everything and to feel like they have one central source unless I bake it into the course and say, you must manage your information in this way. So this actually affords the skills development for students to take the content, reorganize it, and be selective about which content is of value to them and their goals, and then repurpose it and integrate it into their academic life and their professional lives. And so I encourage them to look at career competencies as another element that goes into whatever they build for that course synthesis, but they have the option of creating an ebook, website, an e-portfolio, or a clickable PDF. And the main anchor for all of that is that it must be public facing. And so that adds a level of risk for them, but they don't have to do that until the end of the course. So they've had multiple opportunities to continue that select, organize, and synthesize or integrate sort of iterative process, and then they build their own content that is public facing. So I think it's helping them to think about joining the participatory culture that they already are a part of, but this is just with a different identity. So I figured because that's such a one size fits all type of activity, it might be a benefit for folks who are attending, because it's taken me a while to get there, but it's more about autonomy, students making their own decisions, but then making decisions that are related to the course as well in their professional goals.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing. That is awesome. You know what I'm doing this semester with my graduate students who are enrolled in a 500 level media literacy course called Media Studies is we're of course taking a deep dive in propaganda. No one in this room is surprised that will be the focus, right? Nobody is surprised about that. But we're going to spend 10 weeks and each student is going to radically revise or create a Wikipedia entry from start to finish. I have become really enamored with the folks at Wiki EDU, and the support that I have received in helping scaffold that assignment this summer has been just phenomenal. I'm scared about it, which is actually a sign that it's a good thing for me, right? I'm not sure how it's going to go. It might fail. And my general experience is I always like to be in a place where 1/3 of the work that I'm doing in my class, I just know works like a charm because like I've done it before and it's good. 1/3 is like getting better. Maybe it wasn't so great last time, but I'm going to tweak it and make it better. And then 1/3 is brand new stuff that makes me on the edge of my cliff. For me, that's my perfect bliss. And my students know that not all the things I'm going to do are going to work, because I'm trying to be in that sweet spot of balancing really time-tested, tried and true activities and assignments with stuff that is way out of my own comfort zone. So let's talk a little bit about speaking of fears and anxieties, question 3 is kind of a useful one, I think, for us. What is one challenge that you expect to face this semester?
I'll throw one out there. Myself, aside from things, related to the ongoing pandemic, which just continues to, affect things in strange and unpredictable ways, political polarization makes addressing many of these topics very difficult in my classes. And I understand that, it really makes it tough to talk about credible sources, doing, analysis, breaking media down, and thinking about those issues. Students, I find, at least in my experience, tend to want to avoid any political topic in a lot of my classes. Others may have very different experiences, but I see that they usually get scared when that comes up. And the reality is they see almost everything as political, and that's not their fault, right? Because so much has been politicized. but it definitely makes those conversations difficult to have.
I'm a little concerned about that too. What's one challenge that you expect to face this semester, Joan?
Honestly, the biggest challenge isn't really media related, it's mental health related. I'm expecting that as we're all, or mostly attempting to all go back in person, we've rushed over all the fault lines that have been expressed. I guess also, like Hans just said, in terms of politics, but also in terms of people's social cohesion and their personal mental health. We haven't really, I feel like we shouldn't just be rushing back to classes in person. There should be a couple weeks at the beginning, just like workshops and collecting pulse of everybody. Where are we at? So we've gone from a very stressful couple of years, and now we're supposed to be quote unquote normal, which none of us are. And I feel there should be more recognition of that at the institutional level. So I already know that my students were really struggling last year. So my challenge is going to be to how to, in person, go from those extended office hours I had on Zoom, where I really talked with people over the course of an hour, back to a campus where the office hours are 10 minutes and people are in a pressure cooker. It's the mental health issues that honestly I feel are the biggest challenge.
So beautifully put. And Karen, I saw your thumbs up there. I'm really glad that you reminded us of that, because in the excitement about back to school, keeping students' socio-emotional needs at the top of our brain, and our own mental health as well, is super, super important. Is there something that you want to learn more about in the year ahead? Is there something you're curious about? Hans is looking for a new research project.
I'll jump in there because, somebody had said something about, I think it was you, Hans, taking the lessons that we learned from, the year and a half to the working at home. And one of my experiences was I took a class asynchronous, and I worked with one of our pedagogical designers here. And it was an incredibly eye-opening experience for me, because I've been teaching over the course on and off of about 20 years. And so, you think you know everything. Like, actually, I don't, but you feel like, there isn't that much I could learn. But I learned an incredible amount that I'm trying to reintegrate into my in-person classes. One of the things I learned is that by doing a discussion board, I was getting these incredibly thoughtful answers that I wasn't getting in class. And so I'm trying to work on getting those thoughtful answers in class, but I'm keeping the discussion board because not everybody feels so great about talking, expressing themselves in class. And I wanted to give them that chance to dig deeper themselves, and then, so that was a big thing. And I have to say, Renee, I'm not like making this up or sucking up to you. The week that I spent with you was incredibly eye-opening, and it's kind of coloring everything that I'm doing going forward. But so one of the things that I'm going to learn, and I'm still learning with my students, is all of the digital tools, because, I feel like I have to learn them before I introduce them to the students. And I have to say, it's a challenge. I'm thrashing around and kind of like throwing things at home so that I can get into class and look like I know what I'm doing.
I hope in the small group you get a chance to talk about your plan for the deconstruction project, though, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But now it's time for that small group discussion thing. We're going to put you into groups of 5 or 6. We're going to invite you to introduce yourself briefly and to talk about one of those discussion questions. Just before I open up the rooms and let you go, I just want to put the link back up here for you to take a look at those 4 discussion questions. This is kind of a self-organizing breakout room. So if you can, we're going to take about 20 minutes. Just make sure everybody gets a chance to participate. Rooms are open now. I invite you to join a small group breakout room and make a new friend, have a great conversation. We'll see you back here in about 20 minutes.